All right, so got the engine under the car. Now we got to get the engine up and bolt the subframe up. So that'll be our next step here. Get this engine up into here, bolt it up, and it's easy as that. Okay. All right, so we got the engine up. We've got the subframe connected to the chassis. Back of the transmission's connected. Now we just got to start to connect all the wiring, coolant hoses, intercooler, and then we'll be able to do a dry start. All right, so haven't done a whole lot on the top here. Just connected some of the power steering and transmission cooler hoses down there. Connected the wiring on the top here from the other side. So what I want to do before I connect everything up, I want to be able to crank it and check for oil that comes up into my filter housing, and then take the cover off and inspect to make sure oil is flowing inside the valve cover. You should be able to see oil. So that's why I haven't connected all of this. The valve cover is going to come back off, and so but for now, left side of suspension is hooked up. That's all connected. Exhaust is on, dry shaft is connected. Everything is connected on the bottom. I am vacuum testing my intercooler. Okay. Blocked off that end, and I'm pulling a vacuum on here, and this thing just make sure I don't have any leaks, any debris that may have hit the intercooler fins and put a hole in it. So right now I'm holding right around 28 inches of vacuum, which is good. So this intercooler is good, no leaks. We're gonna go ahead and put this on. Engine is 90% connected. Intercooler wiring, with the exception of the injectors and the coil packs. I'm gonna run a pre-compression check before I run this engine. While I'm gonna also use the compression check to cycle the engine to make sure I get oil primed in the system. So once I get do the compression check, I should fill up my oil reservoir with oil, and once I do that, then I'm gonna connect everything back and do a first start. All right, guys, the initial fill, I'm just gonna use a conventional 5W30 oil. This is starting the break-in process. This is my first fill of this oil. I'm gonna put this in. I'm gonna cycle the engine. I'm gonna check I'm gonna prime the system to make sure I've got oil up. I'm not gonna run my starter for more than 10 seconds at a time and let it cool down. And then I'm gonna run it again until well, again, like I said, I'll be doing a compression check on each one of these to see what my ass found is. So then later, after I do break-in and I run about 1,000 or 1,500, 2,000 miles, I'm gonna check it back again along with my leak down. So going back, initial oil, I'm doing a conventional 5W30 oil. Nothing special. This has got a certain amount of level of ZDDP. This is the zinc phosphate. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that's what it is. That allows the rings to bed in. The main purpose of breaking in an engine is to allow the pistons rings to bed in to the crosshatch pattern in the cylinder wall. So you've got a good mating bedding in process of the rings, and it seats and it seals. If not, you can end up with a certain amount of oil consumption. I don't want that. So initial oil. After we run this, we'll run this for a little bit just to flush out the engine, all the assembly lube, all the different type of assembly lube that we have in here. Just flush that stuff out, get it running up to operating temperature, maybe 20 minutes or so. Then we're gonna drain the oil. Okay, so after that, then I'm gonna drain the oil. And then I'm gonna go with the break-in oil. This is 5W30 break-in oil. This got a higher level of ZDDP for the break-in process, for the bedding in process. So we're gonna run this for maybe 500 to 1,000 miles in the break-in. And after that, once we're fully broken in, we're gonna change this oil and we're gonna go to the fully synthetic. Okay? So after this oil, all right, guys, so after we run through this oil, after we run through the break-in oil, last step is we're gonna go, I'm gonna put the liquid moly fully synthetic 5W30 oil, and this will be our oil that will run, and I'm gonna run an oil change interval of 7,500, 8,000 miles. I am not gonna run this to 12,000, 15,000, whatever the oil indicator says. I'm gonna run a 7,500 mile interval filter. Okay, all right, so let's get to it. All right, guys, so we're gonna do the initial crank of the engine to get the oil primed in the system. I'm also gonna do my initial compression check. So let's get to it. Look at like 195 initial compression on number 6, which is pretty damn good. All right, number 5. It's about 200 psi. 185. 200 psi. You guys can see that? 200 psi. 178 psi. Right, you guys can see we're filled with oil. Okay, system is primed. Okay, fill with oil, system is primed. We are going to go ahead and connect everything, reconnect fuses for the fuel, and we're going to start our braking process, fill in the coolant and so on. Okay, all right guys. All right, so we have to go ahead and torque the new axle collar nut. I'm doing it by myself, so I've done a combination of a couple things. I'm going to lock this off between the two lug nuts here against the ground. Okay, against the ground here, plus I lock the brakes, so the brakes is depressed on the inside. So our first torque here, initial torque is 210 Newton meters. $210. $212. Okay. I'm gonna mark my initial starting point. So I know when I'm at 90 degrees. (92 degrees, equivalent to 361 Newton meters. Whew. That was hard. All right. We're gonna repeat the other side. All right, guys. Status update. Engine is fully installed. All wiring, all vacuum hoses, coolant hoses, everything is all hooked up on the top here. We've added the initial fill. The initial fill is a mixture of conventional motor oil and then 3 of the brake-in oil. Now the initial fill is just going to be to run the engine up to operating temperature. We're gonna run it about, maybe we're not gonna run it at idle, but once we start it up, we're gonna cycle it through the RPMs a little bit, and I'll go into that a little bit more once we start to break in. But the initial fill is there just for getting the engine up to operating temperature. So the most important part of your break-in is within the first you know, a running of the engine with no load, probably 20-30 minutes, and then after that running it with the load on the engine, and that's where you better your seat your rings in. So initially the conventional motor oil, the 5W30, has ZDDP, which is a prime additive for braking, but it has a low parts per million or low ppm. So this may have about 500 to 800 ppm, whereas the braking oil is about 2600 ppm. So I just did a half and half mix because I want to get while the engine is running and I'm cycling through the RPMs, you know, between 2000 to 4500, warming the engine up to 30 minutes. I want to be able to have that braking oil working against the rings and the cylinder bore. After the engine heats up, then we're going to drain it. We're going to get all the contaminants out, or all that assembly lube and everything that was in the engine, that dust, so forth. We're going to drain that oil. We're going to change the filter, and then we're going to add 6 quarts of the 5W30 braking oil. After that, we're going to load the engine up. We're going to drive the engine, load it up from the next 0 miles to 500 miles. So that should be a proper break-in to bed in the cylinder rings, and then we're going to change the oil. After we change the oil, we're going to go with the factory liquid moly synthetic 5W30 oil. Okay, we're going to change the filter and so forth. So coolant, we've got the new BMW coolant mixed to the proper mixture that's inside. We've got new power steering fluid, pretension CFS11, that's in there. On top here is all pretty good, except with the cross support. Suspension is hooked up. You guys saw we torqued the bolt there. Brakes are hooked up. Everything is hooked up. Wiring, ABS sensor, pad sensor. Oh, it's all hooked up. Everything is hooked up on the bottom. Also got the stiffener plates on the bottom. Everything is hooked up. Stiffener plate. Transmission oil. I've got about maybe 4 of the 7 quarts fill of that oil, but I can't fill any more until the engine is at operating temperature between 30 to 50 Celsius in the transmission. So I'm gonna have to work with that to try to get that oil in while I'm warming this engine up. Before we start up, we've got to code the injectors to the code numbers on the injectors to make sure that we've got the correct flow for the correct injector set in the computer. We're going to do that, and then also we're going to clear all the codes from the ECM, all the fault codes. We're going to get all the fault codes cleared out. And one thing I'm supposed to do the actuator eccentric shaft learning process with the bridge from minimum to maximum. There's a process in ISTA to perform that, but that typically does it more at a idle speed, and then it ramps it up a little bit. So I don't want to bring this engine to idle during my braking process, so I may bypass that for now. Just run it the way it is without the break-in, without the learning process. And after I warm the engine up, what I may do is to do that learning process, or I may even do it after I fully bed it in and seat in the rings. I haven't decided yet. If you guys have a comment, let me know. Okay, we're almost done with this. I think probably another 4 hours or so we should be driving this on the road. Okay? Thanks, guys.